Chapter 2, Kali Yuga and the Lost Pilot. The Lost Sister is an episode that no one seems to like, and is generally considered the worst aspect of this season. Every episode of Stranger Things on IMDb sits over or above the extremely high score of 8.5, except The Lost Sister, which sits at 6.2. But I think the reasons for it being so shit are a lot more complex than people usually give it credit for. Yes, it's bad and cringy.
You're a terrible dancer, Axel.
Yes, it's shoehorned in at literally the worst time, between this ending in episode 6 and this opening in episode 8, exactly where episode 6 left off. What's more bizarre is that the Duffers planned the season to be structured like this. This episode was always locked in at chapter 7. I don't know why. It was always that we were going to have this climax at the lab with the dogs coming out of the hall, and we thought it would either be cool or really annoying to step away for an episode. Yeah, it's just annoying. It completely ruins the flow of the narrative, which had only just started to pick up. It's almost like doing a whole little other pilot episode in the middle of your season, which is kind of a crazy thing to do. Yes, doing an episode that functions like a pilot for another show in the middle of your season is insane. It's so different to the rest of Stranger Things that it is incredibly jarring.
It was just very fun and exciting for, I think, all of us to just explore some different tones.
Yeah.
And some of the grittier sort of urban 80s movies, and that, capture that kind of vibe, and just basically expand the show a little bit beyond this town of Hawkins.
Stranger Things' aesthetic just doesn't gel with the whole gritty urban punk thing. The lighting for most of this episode is diffused, like the rest of the show, when it probably should have been harsh and chiaroscuro. This shot here is the closest it comes to what I'm talking about, and looks pretty good, but compare it to how flat the rest of the episode looks. And then compare those shots to how good their aesthetic influences look. Terminator is obviously a big one, and they even reference that film several times this season.
Inhuman, relentless. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator.
Warriors as well. Maybe even the night exteriors of Michael Mann's films. Just look at how shadowy and grainy all of that stuff is, and how this shit pales in comparison. Everything here looks so contrived, and even a bit setty, as in, it looks like a set. Well, people know what the term setty means. Urban Dictionary, setty, a dirty girl who is very promiscuous and does it a lot. Okay, in this context, setty means it looks like a set, not like the urban Chicago location is a slot or something. Stranger Things just generally has a little bit of a manufactured look, but it's hard to critique considering how beautiful and detailed a lot of these sets are. But here, it almost looks like the set of a kid's show. It screams the opposite of punk. It's manufactured, clean, and bright, when it should be messy, grainy, and dark. But this isn't the real problem. A lot of people think that this episode is bad, but because it exists in its own little world, that it has no impact on the rest of the season. I think it's the opposite. In many ways, this episode fucks the entire ending of this season, pushing it in a strange and misaligned direction. But first, let's pull back a bit.
You go out there, ghost or not, it's a risk. We don't take risks, all right? They're stupid. And?
We're not stupid.
The problem stems from the fact that Eleven has nothing to do this season. By not being allowed to leave Hopper's shack, she has her agency taken away, essentially removing her as a main character.
You say soon on day 21. You say soon on day 205. You now say soon on day 326?
What is this? You're like counting the days now, like you're some kind of prisoner?
There's a term in improv called denial, defined as when players are not accepting each other's offers. By offers, they mean anything that advances the scene or narrative. Eleven wants to leave Hopper's shack, but Hopper won't let her.
You promised! I go. And I never leave! Nothing ever happens!
Yeah, nothing happens and you stay safe!
The characters are stuck in denial because Hopper can't accept Eleven's offer, but all Eleven can do is keep asking because it's her desire to leave. They just go around and around in circles and can't get anywhere. Hopper can't say yes because then Eleven would go outside and this arc would be over, and Eleven can't stop asking because that means she would have no desire to reunite with Mike, and also because you can't have a character without a desire. These characters block each other because the story needs them to block each other for drama. But this isn't really drama. There's no back and forward, no struggle. It's essentially, can I leave? Followed by no for several episodes. On top of this, the reason that Hopper is keeping Eleven a secret is extremely flawed, but I'll go into that in Chapter 3. The point is that the issues that emerge in Episode 7 stem from much earlier in this season.
Come on, just stop. It's a simple question.
This is really dumb. What if 11 came, I don't know, 5 minutes before this? Or 5 minutes afterwards? What if literally anyone from the school saw her? What if she ran into any of the kids while they were looking for Dart?
Where'd you go, you little bastard?
It's just lazy writing, and the fact that 11 basically gives up on seeing Mike because she saw him talking to someone else is... I mean, even if her character would do this, it's awfully convenient, isn't it? As the Duffers said, 11 is trying to figure out where she belongs in this world. She doesn't belong with the boys because she can't exist with them without putting them in danger. Just because she can't exist with them without putting them in danger doesn't mean she doesn't belong with them. This just gives them the excuse to have 11 feel like she doesn't belong based on a wacky misunderstanding, which is eerily similar to what I talked about before with Dart. We know as an audience that 11 misunderstood what was going on here, yet we have to sit through a whole fucking subplot predicated on it. Please, Duffers, I'm begging you, stop it. Stop doing this! It's very bad writing. You're just puppeteering characters because you need them to do certain things. In this case, 11 needs to stop caring about Mike, even though that was her sole motivation up until this point.
On day 500?
I don't know.
On day 600?
I don't know.
Day 700? On day 800? I need to see her!
So she can go and find a true home or something. This also gives the writers an excuse for her to argue with Hopper, in which he acts like a complete psycho.
You are like Papa!
Really? I'm like that psychotic son of a bitch? Wow, all right. You'll go back in the lab? One phone call, I can make that happen.
That's like threatening an adopted kid with sending them back to the orphanage. I feel like that's something you'd never joke about, and kind of fucks with Hopper's character. Like, okay, I get that he's just being protective and it's related to his daughter's death, but he really goes full psycho here.
Hey! 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 Open this door! Open this damn door! You wanna go out in the world? You better grow up! Grow the hell up!
This gives 11 an excuse to leave Hopper and search for her mum, which probably explains him acting so out of character.
I want to see Mama.
Again, they play the 11 is looking for a home angle, which would be fine if any of these places were actually appealing to us as an audience.
I can get you a real bed and you can stay here with me if you want. How's that sound?
Okay, this is kind of a meta issue, but we know that 11 is going to reunite with everyone at the end of the season, right? There's never a point where I'm seriously thinking, wow, 11 could totally go off and live with this minor character who she's known for like 5 whole minutes, yet we have to sit through her trying to find a home, first with Hopper and then with her aunt, and later with Carly. There's no appeal for us to see her living with these characters. So for the whole of 11's detour, we're rooting against her, because no alternative she could find would be anywhere close to the characters we've known for an entire season. Now, I'm going to be honest here and say that I don't think this episode is as insufferable as it's made out to be. Yes, Carly's whole gang are incredibly one note.
This is Axel.
Spider hater.
Yes, spider hater. This is Daddy, our newest. And like you, she just left home.
You mean the loony bin?
Mick, our eyes, our protector. This is Sunshine, our warrior.
The acting isn't the best.
I was once just like you know that?
The attempt at being gritty and dark is laughable.
They're dead.
It has random, edgy Fight Club dialogue.
Daryl, your money is insured. We're only stealing from the war criminal billionaires who own this place. We won't even lose a dime.
Stay back.
We're on the same side. I promise.
Stay back.
Now, I don't know that much about gun safety and trigger discipline, but generally it's not a good idea to startle someone holding a gun, especially when they're pointing said gun at your friend's head.
Stay back.
Damn, Charlie.
Also, this episode thinks it's really cool. God, I wish I were Reservoir Dogs. Okay, but what is the episode actually about? Well, Carly's gang basically go around killing people.
Everyone you see here was in some way responsible for what happened to us. You hurt the bad man?
No, we just give him a pat on the back.
You kill them? They're criminals. We simply make them pay for their crimes.
I have a few problems with this, surprise, surprise. Like the fact that these guys are meant to be lovable rogues, but they go around murdering defenseless civilians in cold blood. Yes, I get that this is kind of the point of the end of the episode when Eleven chooses not to murder this guy, but at the very least they're played as a quirky and fun group.
And these men you killed, did they deserve it? They hurt me. And they still want to hurt you. To hurt us. We're just making the first move.
This is where my big problem with this episode lies. Carly's character arc and moral dilemma are artificially imposed onto Eleven.
So I decided to play the part. To stop hiding. To use my gifts against those who hurt us. You're now faced with the same choice, Jane. Go back into hiding and hope they don't find you. Fight. And face him again.
No, she really isn't faced with the same choice. Eleven's arc in this season is not about her taking revenge against those at Hawkins' lab. In fact, her character has never really shown that inclination before.
Papa is dead.
That man tonight disagreed.
You're not real.
All this time, and you haven't looked for me. Why? Because you thought I was dead? Or because you were afraid of what you might find?
Is there any reason Eleven wouldn't have thought he died? It's ambiguous to the audience because by word of God his death was never confirmed, but I'm pretty sure in universe no one suspects that he's secretly alive or something.
The people responsible for this? They're dead.
Do you really believe that?
Oh, except her. Is there something I'm missing here? Does everyone in this season have some unspoken sixth sense that these guys are secretly alive?
I can help you find him.
Just quickly, this is the guy who fried Eleven's mum's brain and abused Carly, just so you know.
And if you don't know, now you know, nigga.
Find who?
Brenner! I can take you to him.
Papa is gone.
No, he is alive.
Do not lie to us, Ray.
I'm not.
But in the next fucking scene, Carly projects this onto Brenner.
All this time, and you haven't looked for me. Why? Because you thought I was dead?
Yeah, 11. You didn't know Brenner was alive? Even though this is information I only just stumbled upon probably an hour ago? You dumb bitch.
You have to confront your pain. You have a wound, 11, a terrible wound. And it's festering. Do you remember what that means? Festering. It means a rot. And it will grow. Spread.
Get out of my head.
And eventually, it will kill you.
Get out of my head!
Does 11 have a terrible wound, meaning she has repressed feelings towards Brenna and her time at Hawkins' lab? If she does, then where in this season do they explore it? Isn't her subplot meant to be about her finding a home? All she's done this season is sit around in Hopper's shack and mope about Mike. Carly is the one with the terrible wound, which is why she is literally projecting this onto Brenna.
I was just like you once. I kept my anger inside. I tried to hide from it, but then that pain festered.
Festered?
It spread until finally I confronted my pain and I began to heal.
As the Duffers said, we wanted a lot of the season to be about the trauma and pain these people have suffered, and actually about confronting that pain in order to heal the wounds. Now, I'm not claiming that it's unrealistic that 11 would want revenge against her tormentors or she wouldn't be scarred by it, but this supposed trauma and pain is never brought up until this episode.
And eventually, it will kill you.
And not only are they treating this like it's some established aspect of her character, but like it's so integral that not dealing with it will corrupt her or something. Okay. You'd think if it was such a big deal, then they'd have mentioned literally anything about it before this point. What they're attempting to do is have Carly be the subplot character, as, you guessed it, John Truby, aka God himself, says, the subplot is used to contrast how the hero and a second character deal with the same problem, in slightly different ways. Through comparison, the subplot character highlights traits and dilemmas of the main character. The issue with this, of course, is that 11 and Carly don't have the same problem. This scene with Brenna is an attempt to con you into the illusion that this is some part of 11's character, when it isn't. Before this point, 11's subplot was about finding a home, and after this episode, it's about her trying to close the gate. At no point besides this one section of this single episode is it ever about taking revenge on the people from Hawkins' lab. If they wanted to go for something that was actually relevant to 11, Carly should have shown her perspective on what constituted a home. It's shocking that they don't do this, considering that all of the right elements are there. Carly's whole thing is that she was an outcast and found a home with other outcasts, right?
But like us, the outcasts.
Outcast.
Freaks.
Speak for yourself.
Society left them behind, hurt them, discarded them.
We were dead. All of us. Carly saved us.
What does that remind you of? But 11 seems to have a revelation about what constitutes a home and friends, even without Carly's help.
Jane, get in.
It's a damn graveyard.
Mike, it's a trap! It's a trap! I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I have to go back. My friends are in danger.
This isn't time for a talk. We gotta go right now.
Your mother sent you here for a reason, remember? We belong together.
There's nothing for you back there. They cannot save you, Jane.
No. But I can save them.
You know, that sounds like a really cool, dramatic movie line, but it doesn't really mean anything. They cannot save you, Jane? What? Save her from herself? From the terrible wound that she doesn't have?
Your mother sent you here for a reason, remember? We belong together.
They try to make it seem like a tough decision between staying with Carly or saving her friends, but it isn't in the slightest. 11 already decided not to kill Ray, so she doesn't have an urgent motive to stay with these guys. It's not kill Ray or save your friends, it's save your friends or just vaguely keep on living with us. Yeah, real fucking tempting. Also, why can't 11 just rejoin with these guys later? Just give them, like, your phone number or address or something. Be like, I gotta deal with this Lovecraftian hentai monster. I'll be back in a week.
I need to get through! I need to get through! Whoa! I need to
This is a very shit version of what I like to call the premonition of friends in danger, best seen in Empire Strikes Back. Not only does this episode pay homage to Yoda's training in this scene, but it borrows this as well.
I saw a city in the clouds.
Friends you have there.
They were in pain.
It is the future, you see.
The difference here is that it's a real dilemma whether or not Luke should stay, and there are compelling arguments on both sides.
I've got to go to them.
Decide you must. How to serve them best. If you leave now, help them you could, but you will destroy all for which they have fought and suffered. Luke, you must complete the training.
I can't keep the vision out of my head. They're my friends. I gotta help them.
You must not go.
But Han and Leia will die if I don't.
Only a fully trained Jedi Knight, with the Force as his ally, will conquer Vader and his Emperor. If you end your training now, if you choose the quick and easy path, as Vader did, you will become an agent of evil. Patience.
And sacrifice Han and Leia.
If you honor what they fight for, yes.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, which also borrows heavily from Star Wars, does this as well.
Katara's in danger! I have to go!
No, Aang. By choosing attachment, you have locked the chakra. If you leave now, you won't be able to go into the Avatar state at all.
Both of these scenes work on the basis of what the hero should do versus what they feel most compelled to. Arguably, they both make the objectively wrong choice, but they also make the most compassionate one, which is why it's such a tough decision.
There's nothing for you back there. They cannot save you, Jane.
This, on the other hand, is weak garbage. Not only is everyone praying that 11 leaves, since no one likes these characters, but there's nothing keeping us invested in her staying.
Luke, don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side.
The bad men were trying to take your way again, and that made you angry. Good. So find that anger.
Now, release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me.
Not too quick. He wasn't so generous with your mother.
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
Or stay and avenge your mother.
Join me.
Together.
And together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
Let us heal our wounds.
But not only does this episode fail to understand Empire thematically, it fails to understand Luke's training literally.
The bad men were trying to take your way again, and that made you angry. Good. So find that anger.
It could just be me, but I was under the assumption that 11 using her powers was already an emotional exercise for her.
Last night you told me you lifted a van once. Yes.
Right? Which I'm assuming was emotionally motivated. I mean, what about this? This seems pretty emotional. Again, using anger to fuel powers is really about Kali and not 11.
Do you remember us?
What about us? Do you remember us, Ray?
Please.
I was just like you once. I kept my anger inside. I tried to hide from it, but then that pain festered.
Remember that the subplot character is meant to show an alternative to the hero's own dilemma, and this is not 11's dilemma. This is not how you do this at all, which is ironic considering the film they're ripping off is practically the textbook example of it.
I'm looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say.
Right.
Help you I can. Yes.
I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior.
Yoda is a brilliant subplot character, and character in general, because his thematic purpose is right there in his design.
I can't.
It's too big. Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you?
He shatters Luke's conception of what a strong warrior is by being a spastic little space elf, as well as his self-imposed limitations.
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No different. Only different in your mind.
He exists to prove to Luke what genuine strength in a warrior is, and that with the Force, it transcends the physical.
For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Now, I could just be speaking for myself, but every time I see one of those clips from Empire, I want to go and watch the whole film again, whereas when I watch this, I want to slit my wrists. Anyway, Yoda is a genius piece of writing, and works because he offers an alternative perspective to Luke's. Luke comes in with a limited understanding, and has his perspective shattered by a master.
I am ready. Ben, I can be a Jedi. Ben, tell him I'm ready.
Ready, are you? What knows you ready?
Ready are you? What knows you of ready?
It's why the mentor archetype works so well and has been used so often. Imparting of wisdom means growth and understanding for the character and the audience alike. Not only does Luke have his conception of a warrior challenged, but so do we.
Is the dark side stronger?
No. But easier, more seductive.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know when you are calm, at peace, passive.
In Stranger Things 2, Eleven doesn't really have a perspective on the stuff Carly is talking about, nor has it ever been something her character has really dealt with. She tries her own method of moving the train, but we don't really know what this constitutes. Carly suggests her method of using anger, and then Eleven tries it, and it works, and they move on. Right, okay. Eleven doesn't stop for a moment and be like, maybe I shouldn't use anger to fuel my abilities, since that seems like a terrible idea. And also, you're a deranged murderer, so you're probably not the best person to be getting advice from. If, say, Eleven had used her powers with positive emotion and then Carly suggested using anger, then we'd be going somewhere. But something like this doesn't happen, so it doesn't work. Why did I spend so fucking long talking about this shit? Well, because we flash back to it in the climax of the entire season.
You have a wound, 11.
You're probably wondering how I got into this situation. First, let's rewind a bit. 11 leaves Carly to go and save her friends and meets up with the rest of the group. Anyway, 11 quickly recovers and storms Hawkins' lab so she can close an obvious vagina joke and stop the xenomorphs from killing Hawkins. And then this happens.
You have a wound, 11. A terrible wound.
Okay, I opened it.
And it's festering. And it will grow. Spread. And eventually, it will kill you.
So this is the main thing about The Lost Sister I think really fucks with this season. There's an attempt here to merge thematic elements that just don't go together, and the whole thing falls apart. At the start of the season, 11 is looking for a home, first living with Hopper and then considering living with her aunt, and then with Carly. When she's with Carly, the festering wound concept is established, or rather forced upon her character. The only purpose it seems to serve is that it's brought up in her training so she can move a big thing, I guess. And here, at the end of the season, she's tasked with closing the gate that she feels guilt over accidentally opening.
Mike, I'm sorry.
Sorry for what?
The gate. I opened it. I'm the monster.
The finding a home aspect is kind of resolved when she just decides to go back to Hawkins, but there's an attempt to merge these two themes. There's a mixing of metaphors because they try to make the gate the festering wound, I guess because it literally looks like a wound, when the festering wound was meant to be 11 dealing with her feelings of anger towards Brenner and Hawkins' lab. As the Duffers said, because we wanted 11 to have her own journey and have this journey of self-discovery or whatever, that's why we did it. When we got to the point of writing the episode, we wanted to see if we really needed it or not. We actually did toy with pulling the episode completely, but then the ending with 11 didn't work at all. It just didn't land at all. Then we ended up deciding we needed it. No, the ending doesn't work because you're just mashing these things together. Although the music swelling and the screaming and the flashes of intense emotional scenes certainly make it feel like something is being said, there really isn't. 11 has Brenner, who is actually Carly, telling her about her festering wound, which is then somehow transmuted into her feeling guilt over the gate being open? Okay?
The gate. I opened it.
Since when was the gate of any of these things a point of contention in this season? I don't think it's brought up a single time in relation to her character. And yet, it's apparently the thematic climax of this entire fucking season. Again, isn't her subplot meant to be about finding a home? How the fuck did we end up here? With a fucking giant vagina. You also have 11 for some reason facing off against the Mind Flayer, which is really Will's enemy. Think about this for a second. 11 has no idea what this thing even is since she fucked off for the entire season. So why is she the one confronting it? She left Hawkins because Hopper was being a fucking madman, and all she's greeted with is a fucking Lovecraftian hentai monster. This is all Carly projecting this onto 11 for one episode before it's dropped as an issue. Now, it's recontextualized to imply that there's some thematic thing going on. Whatever that actually is. So not only are they flashing back to stuff that is meaningless and forced upon her character, but stuff that is irrelevant to the closing of the gate. The best way to prove this is, for one, the fact that the Duffers actually tried to remove it from the episode, which means that they had a certain feeling that it didn't work, but I think either just left it in because they'd shot the footage and felt like they had to flash back to something, or they couldn't put their finger on what it was. The second test is the fact that you can actually just remove this in editing and it doesn't change the scene at all. Nothing 11 flashes back to actually changes what she does in the finale. When she's closing the gate, she doesn't like flash back and then change how she's gonna close it or something. She just has like irrelevant flashbacks as she's closing this thing. It's completely pointless. You can literally remove it. Watch. Here's it removed. It's the same fucking scene. What we're being reminded of has nothing to do with this shit. It's literally just there to, like, convince you that maybe something's going on when it really isn't. I guess this is also meant to be a callback to 11 using her anger to fuel her powers, in which case, that's the payoff. The grand reveal of your season is, hey, try being angry when using your powers. Holy fuck, what is this ascended level wokeness? Fucking riveting. The other problem is that we've already had this scene before. We've already seen 11 using her powers on this train, and now she's just doing it again. Again, compare this to Empire. There's a reason they have Luke fail this, because he still has things to learn. 11 already perfected this 2 episodes prior, and in about 2 minutes. Luke, on the other hand, spends almost all of Empire training, and he still couldn't do this. You think maybe cramming all of this stuff into a single episode when it wasn't relevant before or after is a kind of bad idea? Maybe? I realize that a lot of this stuff is floaty and theoretical and hard to pin down in reality, but it's the source of that feeling that something just isn't right, that it just isn't hitting the correct emotional note. Even with the outstanding practical and special effects, stirring music, and a full throttle performance, something just rings hollow here.